good evening. If you are listening to this right now, your body may be tired. Maybe your head hasn't stopped yet, but that's okay. Now you are here, and this story is yours alone. Today, we are going to listen to the last flight of the bird Garuda, an ancient, immense being respected by everyone except himself. A bird that flew for ages, followed orders, won wars, until the day he began to doubt not his strength, but the meaning of it all. And before you think that this is just another story about gods and fantastic creatures, remember that almost everything that is divine also gets tired. And this is a story about when even immortals ask themselves, what if I could choose? So, if this calms you down in any way, if you want more nights like this, subscribe to the channel. Now, if you can, turn off the lights, leave the fan on. If you like the sound, take a deep breath. Let your body weigh a little more on the mattress. No one will charge you for anything in the next few hours. The story is about to begin, and it begins like this, with a still sky and a motionless bird up there, trying to understand why. Suddenly, flying seems not enough. You are still there, lying down, breathing slowly, up there, in a sky that has no beginning or end. Garuda hovers without flapping his wings. He is not tired. He is attentive, and this is a different kind of silence. It is not peace. It is waiting. For ages, Garuda flew without question. The air was his home, speed, his instinct. The gods called to him, he answered, with precision, with power, with that lightness that only those born for the sky carry. But now, hovering among the high clouds, something has changed. It is not physical. It is not tiredness. It is a small idea that has begun to bother him, a simple, almost silly thought. Why? Why am I still here? Why do I keep going when no one is asking me for anything? And this kind of thought is treacherous. It comes gently, like a breeze, but it stays. And you know how it is. Sometimes, the problem is not what you feel, it is what you stopped feeling. Garuda has always had a purpose. Missions, battles, destinies, mapped out. But there, in the void between one order and another, he realized there was no direction, and without direction, the flight becomes a slow fall. The world below was still noisy, men building, praying, fighting, destroying, loving, sleeping, and there he was, without being part of any of it, too high to be one of them, too submissive to be free. And it is in this pause, in this suspended time, that the discomfort grows. Garuda tries to remember the last time he flew of his own free will, and he doesn't remember. He was always called, he was always sent, he was always useful. And now no one calls, and the sky, which used to be his natural extension, seems strange, like a place where he was forgotten by mistake. In the distance, a cloud slowly dissolves. He watches without haste. Time no longer presses on him, but something inside does press on him, a restlessness that starts in the feathers of his wings, passes through his broad chest, and settles deep in his chest. It is not pain. It is a poorly formulated desire, like when you want to leave, but you don't know where to go yet. There's no revolt. There's no anger. Just an annoyance that can't be resolved with more speed. He could fly now, in any direction. No obstacle would stop him, but he doesn't move because it's not about going. It's about why to go. And this, strange as it may seem, is new. Garuda, the vehicle of Vishnu, the devourer of serpents, the Lord of the skies, is standing still, thinking. This has never happened before. And that's exactly what's scary, because when a being like Garuda starts to think, the entire sky has to listen. Before he became what he is, Garuda was an egg. Few people remember that. An egg left at the top of a sacred tree, born from the union of a wise man and a goddess, or something like that. The details are mixed up, but what matters is that He was born to serve. He didn't even have time to choose. From the first beat of his wings, greatness was expected of him. His mother smiled. The gods bowed and said, "He will be Vishnu's transport," a sentence disguised as honor. Garuda grew up knowing his destiny. No questions, no pause. Flying was not just freedom, it was a function, and functions are non-negotiable. He served with perfection. He carried Vishnu through battles, worlds, and dimensions. No god complained, and why would they? Garuda did everything right. He never missed a path. He never hesitated. He never questioned. That was what made him trustworthy, but also invisible. Because when you do everything right, every day, for ages, people forget that you feel it too. Vishnu, despite being wise, never asked if Garuda was okay. Maybe he thought that beings like him didn't need to be taken care of. Maybe he thought loyalty was inherently eternal. Or maybe he was just too busy being a god. Garuda didn't complain. He didn't need to. For a long time, he truly believed that his role was sacred, that there was nothing better than serving a divine purpose, the feeling of belonging to something greater than himself. It's a dangerous feeling, by the way, because it takes up so much space inside that there's little left for other desires. And when those desires finally try to be born, they seem wrong, but they're not. They were just silent, and now they've started to speak. Garuda doesn't want to destroy anything. He doesn't want to stop being who he is. He just wants to know if he could be something else too. Just for a while. Just to try it out. Is that too much to ask? Maybe it is. But even celestial beings have limits. And sometimes the hardest part isn't breaking the chain. It's admitting that it exists. Garuda's body knows no aging. The feathers remain firm, shiny, unbreakable. The claws are still capable of tearing through mountains. The eyes see horizons that no man could imagine. He is whole, and yet you are tired. But it's a strange tiredness. It doesn't come from effort. It doesn't come from battle. It comes from within, from a place he didn't even know existed. It's the kind of tiredness that can't be resolved with rest. Because it's not physical, it is an exhaustion of meaning. Like when you do everything right, everything expected, and at the end of the day, you still feel like something was missing. Garuda tries to remember the last moment he felt excitement, not for the mission, not for glory, but for the simple idea of flying. Just fly, without a reason, without a destination, just by existing. But that memory doesn't come. The closest he can get is an old, vague memory from when he was still a chick, and he would flap his wings just to feel the wind before the gods, before orders, before understanding that freedom and duty are not synonymous. This kind of memory hurts, because it shows what was lost without fanfare. Little by little, between one obedience and another, Garuda stopped being a free being and became a symbol. And symbols do not rest. Symbols have no doubts. Symbols only exist for others. Maybe that's what's tiring. Always being the same, every day, for millennia. No pause, no fail. Always strong, always ready. Nobody asks if he wants it. Everyone assumes he does. And at first, he even wanted to. Serving Vishnu was an honor. He believed it. Still believes in part. But over time, what was once an honor became routine. And routine, even in heaven, weighs. Sometimes he thinks, what if I stopped? Just for a while. Don't disappear. Don't hide. Just land. Keep silent. Observe, but it soon corrects itself. The world expects him to fly. Heaven expects him to be there. Vishnu waits. And he, even tired, continues. That's what keeps him in the air. The fear of disappointing. The fear of being seen as ungrateful, or worse, dispensable. This is a fear that few admit, but he feels it. Because as great as he is, Garuda still wants to be needed. You still need to feel like you matter. But this comes at a price. And the price is this fatigue that doesn't go away. He looks down at the earth and sees men exhausted for the same reasons. They also follow because they have to follow. They work, they care, they fight, even when it no longer makes sense. Even when the body has already asked for rest, there is a silent connection between them. And for the first time, Garuda doesn't feel so different. That doesn't console him, but it brings you closer because tiredness, when shared, becomes understanding. He is no longer alone in heaven. It is surrounded by similar silences, and maybe that's what's starting to change inside him. The recognition that something needs to be different, not tomorrow, not after the next mission. Now, but now, for someone like Garuda, it's a strange concept. He always lived for the eternal, of the divine, from after. Stopping now seems risky, as if it were a breach of pact. But he doesn't want to break anything. Just breathe. Just feel your own weight. Just listen to yourself. This should not be prohibited. This shouldn't feel wrong. But it seems. And yet, the desire grows. Discreet. Constant. Like a current of air that changes direction slowly, without making a fuss. And Garuda starts following her. No rush. No noise. Still not knowing where she's going. Above the highest clouds, where the wind barely touches, Garuda remains. Still, in the sky. It is strange to see a being made for movement in absolute stillness. But he needs this silence. Not an ordinary silence. It is that thick silence that covers everything, without voices, without orders, without prayers. A space where, for the first time, he hears only himself. For centuries, Garuda lived among the sounds of the gods, the clanging of celestial weapons, the mantras that rose from human mouths, the war cries in the battles against the Nagas. There was always noise. There was always haste. Now, no more. Now there is only him, and this emptiness that begins to show itself to be fertile, because sometimes silence is frightening, but sometimes it saves. For the first time, Garuda feels that he does not need to answer to anything. There is no summons. There is no mission. He could disappear right there, and no one would notice right away. The world would continue to turn. Vishnu would continue to be worshipped. The other celestial beings would find ways to move. This realization does not sadden him. Quite the opposite. There is a certain relief in knowing that everything does not depend on him. He, who has always been seen as essential, begins to realize that being essential is a dangerous illusion. In silence, this kind of truth appears more clearly, and contrary to what he expected, it does not hurt as much. It just makes space. He closes his eyes. His breathing is long, calm. His immense body remains suspended, like a mountain in the air. It neither rises nor falls. It just floats. Time here does not have the same rhythm. A second lasts as long as it wants. An hour can be nothing, and that is freedom too. Little by little, he begins to notice details that he had ignored before. The soft tone of the sky changing with the light, the way the particles float around the wing, the exact heat of the sun on each part of the body. Everything has always been there, but only now does he feel it. It is curious how the world seems more real when you stop. Silence reveals what speed hides, and he thinks about this, about how many things he has lost in a hurry, about how many times he was efficient, but not present, because there is a difference between passing through a place and actually being there. Garuda has flown through so many skies, seen so many worlds, but now he realizes few of those flights were his. He was there, yes, but it was always for someone, in the service of something, never for himself, and that tires him. Not the body, the being. He takes a deeper breath. He still doesn't know what to do with this perception. He still doesn't have a plan, but he begins to accept that Maybe it's time to fly in a different way. Not by orders, not by destiny, just by desire. The idea is still fragile, but firm enough not to disappear. Like a spark inside a dry nest. It needs care. It needs time. And silence. A lot of silence. Garuda opens his eyes. The sky is still the same. Blue, clear, endless. But it's different. Just a little. Almost imperceptible. But that's how all change begins. Time passes. He doesn't count. He doesn't need to. Those who have lived for millennia learn to ignore clocks. But even without counting, Garuda feels it. Something moves inside. Something small. Insistent. A doubt. At first, almost imperceptible. Like a tiny stone stuck in a feather. Annoying, but not urgent. But it's there. And Garuda knows. If a doubt enters, it won't go away easily. The doubt is not about Vishnu. He continues to respect the god. He admires his wisdom, his calm, his way of observing the world, with that non-judgmental gaze. The doubt is not about duties either. Garuda still recognizes the value of missions, of fair gestures, of divine order. The doubt is different, simpler, more difficult. It's a question that won't go away. What if I'm not just this? He never asked himself that question before. He always knew what he was. He was always defined by others. The gods said, Garuda is the messenger. Humans said, Garuda is the protector. The texts said, Garuda is the symbol, and he accepted, not out of submission, but out of habit. Now, standing among the clouds, with the silence still fresh in his body, he begins to think, what if I were more? Not better, not bigger, just different. The doubt transforms. From a question, it becomes a desire, a discreet desire that does not scream, but pulsates, like a muscle forgetting what rest was. Garuda wants to understand who he is when he is not serving anyone. It does not have to be something grand. Maybe just a landing, a conversation, a place where no one recognizes him, a day without open wings. It is curious, a being with so much power, asking for the right to simply be. And this desire begins to grow. Little by little, it takes shape, a kind of internal map that points to a place he does not know, but feels. And in this process, Garuda does not feel weak. On the contrary, for the first time in a long time, he feels something similar to presence, as if he were returning to himself, as if he had lived only half of his existence until now, and the other half had been kept hidden, waiting for this doubt. Doubt does not bring answers, but it opens space, and that is enough, because it is in this space that the flight can change. He looks at the sky around him. Nothing stops him. No call, no command. He is free, and for the first time, he truly knows this. He still does not fly. He is still standing, but by choice, and this choice changes everything, because even standing still, he feels something has already begun. Up there, where time passes slowly and thoughts weigh like ancient stone, Vishnu opens his eyes. He had not slept. Gods do not sleep like men, but he was quiet, watching the flow of things, the rivers, the destinies, the small dramas that rise like smoke from the world of men. He feels when something changes, not with fanfare, with absence, the absence of Garuda. It is not a disappearance. It is not rebellion. It is just too much silence. Garuda was always nearby, even without being called. He was a constant presence, a discreet reflection in the sky, a sound of wings in the distance. And now, nothing. Vishnu notices, not with fright, but with a slight strangeness, as if a habitual shadow had withdrawn from the light. He does not rush. He does not send messengers. He just observes, because Vishnu knows that not everything needs to be interrupted. Sometimes, silence has more to say than a summons, and he respects that, but he feels it, a kind of contained emptiness. It is not concern, It is something else. A quiet curiosity. Garuda never failed to respond. He was always available, always faithful. Vishnu never doubted. But then again, he never asked. He never really looked beyond his role. He knew Garuda was loyal, but he never stopped to think if that loyalty had a cost. Now, he begins to consider. The god lightly touches the air. An image forms. There is Garuda, motionless, standing among the clouds, his eyes open, but turned inward. Vishnu says nothing. He just sees and understands. Not everything, but enough. He could call him. He could remind him of his responsibilities. He could repeat the ancient pacts, the divine promises, but he doesn't. Because as much as he is a god, Vishnu also has doubts. And one of them is, how far does duty go? To what extent is keeping someone tied to their role a form of justice or selfishness? Vishnu takes a deep breath. There is no rush. Garuda is not rebelling. He is just feeling. And feeling, for someone like him, is rare. It is valuable. Vishnu knows the world. He knows that even the most elevated beings, sooner or later, face this moment, a point at which identity is no longer comfortable, at which certainties no longer warm, at which it is necessary to stop. The god respects this, even if he does not fully understand it, because Vishnu, even with all his wisdom, never needed to stop. He is what he is. He always was. But not Garuda. Garuda was shaped, created to serve. And perhaps that is why he is tired. Vishnu closes his eyes again. Not in contempt, in reverence. He knows. Some answers only come when the other has time to find them alone. He does not call. He does not order. He just waits. And deep down, perhaps he wishes that Garuda would return different. Not because he made a mistake, but because he finally had time to be just him. Garuda doesn't think about war often. Not because of trauma, but because of distance. Battles seem like they're from another era, a time when he acted on reflex. He fought because it was expected, and he was good at it. Relentless, fast, precise. No enemy lasted long in his claws, especially the Nagas, the divine serpents, eternal rivals. It was almost automatic. If a Naga appeared, Garuda flew, hunted, conquered. Legends celebrated these confrontations. They turned him into a hero, a symbol of the victory of heaven over earth. But now, standing still, looking at the silent blue, he remembers those moments with a subtle unease. It's not regret, but it's not pride either. It's a strange feeling, as if he had lived through it with eyes that are no longer the same today. He remembers the screams, the blood, the looks of fear, and how everyone applauded him afterward. The gods greeted him with reverence. Humans drew him in temples. The scriptures called him the purifier. But Garuda didn't feel clean afterward. He felt useful. That's all. There was a functional coldness to every battle, as if he were a weapon, not a being. And for a long time, he accepted that role, because he thought it was part of destiny, that the greater good justified everything, that serving was noble, even if it hurt. But now, reflecting, he realizes something he didn't see before. He never questioned whether those battles were really necessary. He never looked into the eyes of those he faced. He never thought about what happened after the dust settled. He played his part and left. He always left. The world saw him as fair, but justice, he begins to realize, is not always clear, not always pure. Sometimes it comes loaded with silence, and that silence also kills. Garuda doesn't feel guilty, but he feels a weight that didn't bother him before, a weight that disguised itself as duty. He thinks, how many wars have I fought because of orders? And how many would I have fought if I had a choice? The answer doesn't come easy, but the question itself transforms him, because that is where the change lies, not in the certainty, but in the courage to ask. He spreads his wings, not to fly, just to feel the space around him. He still doesn't know what to do with this memory. He hasn't decided yet if he will fight again one day, but he knows that if he does, it will be for another reason, no longer out of blind obedience, no longer because someone told him he should. The next battle, if there is one, will have to go through his own judgment, and maybe that will scare the gods. Maybe it won't, but Garuda no longer cares so much about other people's fear. He is starting to take care of his own. Garuda has flown over kingdoms, forests, mountains, seas that shine like broken mirror. He has seen cities rise from clay and disappear into dust. He has landed in temples, palaces, battlefields, but he has not stayed in any of these places. None of them were his. And now, with his wings closed and his chest still, he asks himself, where would my place be? If I had one, it is a simple question, but it hurts. Because Garuda has never had a home. He has had functions. He has had paths. He has had destinations, but never a place of his own, a place where he could rest without being available, where no one would call him a symbol, a guardian, a means of transportation, where he was just Garuda, just the name, no title, no mission, and perhaps that is why the tiredness weighs so heavily now, because it is not just physical, nor just emotional, it is existential. It is the tiredness of someone who has never landed by choice, always by order, always by necessity, never by will. He begins to think, has anyone ever asked if I wanted to stay? Vishnu never asked, and it wasn't even out of malice. It was out of habit. Garuda was always there, always ready, and readiness became his identity, a being ready for anything, except to exist without being useful. But now he wants that, not a palace, not a golden nest, maybe just a rock, a space of stone and wind, a corner where he can rest, breathe, and not be noticed. Because sometimes the greatest rest is anonymity, and Garuda begins to realize that the absence of a home is not just geographical, it is internal. He never built a place inside himself to rest. There was always movement, task, expectation. Now, this emptiness begins to ask for space, an emptiness that wants to be filled with presence, not with work, and it is difficult because Garuda was created to serve, to always be available. But serving is not the same as belonging. He feels that belonging is being able to stay, being able to stop, without fear of being forgotten, without guilt for not being on a mission. But the truth is that Garuda is afraid of becoming irrelevant if he stops. Fear of not being remembered if he's not flying. This fear is old. And it's not just his, it's everyone's who were taught to only exist if they're useful. But he starts to doubt this. He starts to think that maybe, just maybe, he deserves to exist even when he's not moving, even when he's not serving anyone. He looks at the horizon. There are no promises there, just space. And in this space, a new desire is born, to find a place where he can be just a body, just breathing, just a bird. A place where no one is waiting for him. And if no one is waiting for him, maybe he can arrive calmly. Garuda remains still, but the air around him never stops. And little by little, he begins to listen, not with his ears, but with his body. The winds speak, they always have, but he never had time to listen. He was always flying too fast, always on his way to something. Not now. Now he is there, and the winds touch him gently, as if they recognize that finally the sacred bird is ready to listen. The first whisper comes from the east, light as dust. It says nothing directly, it just asks, "Why are you still there?" Garuda does not answer, but the question pierces him, not as a demand, more like a reminder. The wind from the south rises slowly, warm, and brings memories. Old flights through living jungles, sunny days when flying was a game, not a function. The past arrives in pieces, a silent flapping of wings, a curve made only for beauty. The wind from the west, more serious, denser, whispers, "Are you waiting for permission?" And Garuda feels this as a nudge, because maybe he really is. Maybe he's still waiting for someone to let him go, to rest, to simply change. Even now, with no one around, he carries the idea that he needs to be released, as if freedom required a stamp. The north wind descends coldly, but not cruelly. He speaks softly. It's not a mistake to want to stop. Stopping is also part of flying, and this is the kind of truth that Garuda had never heard. He had always associated flying with movement, with continuing. But now he understands. Stopping is also flying, because flying is what he decides it to be. The winds don't push him, they only suggest. And this is new. He's used to commands, not suggestions, to clear orders, not breezes that say, "Follow if you want," and he's starting to like it. Because this is how you relearn to choose, without fear, without urgency. Garuda closes his eyes, lets his body grow a little heavier. The sky supports him, and the winds continue. They don't say everything, they don't point to a destination, but they leave us with an idea. Perhaps there is no right place to arrive. Perhaps the meaning lies in the landing itself, in the silence itself, and that changes everything. Because if the flight does not have to be useful, it can be anything, even rest, even contemplation, even emptiness. And Garuda, for the first time, accepts this as a real possibility. He no longer needs to fight against the pause. It is also part of who he is. The winds, now softer, seem to agree. They surround him, as if to say, "That's it. You understand." And Garuda understands, not with words, with presence. The sky no longer presses him. It just welcomes him, and that is enough. Garuda always looked down. It was part of his routine, part of his job, seeing the world of men from above, assessing the routes, the conflicts, the clamor. It was like looking at a living map. Rivers, villages, armies on the march, temples under construction, people being born and dying. But it was never personal. It was a functional observation, like someone checking the status of a machine. Now, still and silent, he looks again, and something changes. He no longer sees a map. He sees lives, and he sees fatigue. He sees the same weight he feels inside his chest, reflected in the bodies down below. Workers who carry on even though they have no strength. Mothers who console without consolation. Young people who run without knowing where to. And all of them trying, just trying. Garuda feels a strange pang, which is not pity nor superiority. It is recognition. He, the celestial bird, sees himself in them, not in form, but in feeling. Because there too, there is movement without pause, functions without choice, hope mixed with exhaustion. And he thinks, perhaps humans have never been so different. They crawl, he flies, but neither of them continues, without time to ask why. Garuda sees a man kneeling before a small statue, praying. He knows that kind of prayer. It's a plea, not for glory, just for relief. And that touches something in him, because that's also what he's looking for now. Relief, a space where he doesn't need to be anything other than what he is. Flight, power, history, all of that seems small compared to that simple image. A fragile human asking for strength to continue. And Garuda understands. Perhaps true strength isn't in the size of one's wings, but in continuing. Even when one no longer knows the way, he observes more. Children playing in the dust, women sharing silence, an old man feeding smaller birds with counted grains. small gestures, without an audience, without recognition, but full of meaning. And he begins to wonder, what if the value isn't in great deeds? What if all that matters is in these tiny, almost invisible moments? Garuda doesn't come down, doesn't show himself, doesn't interrupt, just looks. Because sometimes that's all you can do, bear witness. And in this silent witness, he feels his heart slow down, as if each scene down there lifted a little of the weight he carries. The connection doesn't require words, nor presence, just attention. He sees pain, but he also sees resistance. He sees fear, but he also sees tenderness. The world is contradictory, but it's whole. And he, who always saw it as something inferior, begins to understand there is wisdom in living so close to the ground, because there, every step matters. Every choice is felt. Every pause is conquered. And that's something he still needs to learn. The sky remains vast around him, but now it seems less distant because Garuda is no longer separate. He's together, from above, but together. And that, in itself, changes everything. Garuda has always been free, or at least, that's what everyone told him. After all, someone who flies like him, who effortlessly crosses worlds, who talks to gods and scares away demons, can only be free, right? But now, in this silence suspended between heaven and earth, he begins to realize there are chains that don't shine, chains that don't make noise, chains that have no physical weight, but wrap themselves around the soul. He feels these chains now. They are made of old promises, of assigned roles, of expectations that are not his. They are invisible ties that keep him spinning in the same orbit, even when no one else is looking. He thinks of the words he has always heard. You are noble. You are necessary. You are a symbol. And all these words, so beautiful, so heavy, ended up becoming walls because there was no room to be anything else. Just that, the symbol, the devotee, the vehicle. And the problem with being a symbol is that people stop seeing you as someone. They start seeing only what you represent, and what you feel becomes a detail. He remembers when he first started noticing this. It was subtle. A glance that passed by, an automatic greeting. No one asked how he was. Because in theory, he was always fine. He was celestial after all. But no one is always fine, not even those who fly. And these small absences of care began to become ties, one after the other, invisible but constant. And the worst part is that, for a long time, Garuda also believed them. He thought that complaining was a lack of gratitude, that questioning was betrayal, that asking for a break was weakness. But now he understands. All of this was taught, not chosen. He doesn't blame anyone. Not the gods, not humans, but he begins to undo the knots, one by one. First, the one of eternal obligation. He repeats silently, I can stop. Then, the one of usefulness as a value. I am more than what I do. Then, the tightest, the fear of being forgotten. I exist, even in silence. These phrases don't solve everything, but they open up space. And in this space, Garuda breathed for the first time. He owes nothing to anyone. The chains are still there, but they no longer control him. He sees them, and seeing is half the freedom. Because the other half is choosing what to do with it, and he is beginning to choose. Garuda is not impulsive. He never was. His movements were always calculated, precise, necessary. He learned over time, and from the gods, that acting without thinking was the thing of hasty mortals. But now, with everything he has been feeling, he begins to form a plan. Not a grandiose plan, not a revolt, not a noisy goodbye. A simple plan, silent. He will leave, not to run away, not to confront, just to see, to find out who he is, outside of the orders, the rituals, the reverence. And to do that, he needs to go slowly. He needs to leave without causing waves. Because if he says he will go, they will try to convince him to stay. If he asks for permission, they will deny it, and he does not want to argue or justify. He does not want to convince anyone of anything. He just wants to go. The idea will ripen like quiet fruit. Without fanfare, he will leave at dusk when the sky is more golden, more discreet, when the world is distracted by its own noises. He will not take anything. He does not need to. What he carries is in his chest, and that is enough. He doesn't know where he's going yet, but it doesn't matter. The destination isn't the focus. The focus is the movement that comes from within, the choice. For the first time, a choice that's his alone. He'll fly low, far from the divine roots, far from the temples and the celestial eyes. He wants silence. He wants shade. He wants ground, not to hide, but to listen to himself. Maybe he'll stop somewhere remote. A mountain, a nameless field, a piece of the world where no one knows who he is, where he can just exist, land, observe, sit. Yes, sit. Something so simple, so human, so rare for someone who's lived in the air. This plan, still without an exact form, is what keeps him calm now. While the gods continue to be busy, while the world spins as it always has, Garuda prepares his exit in silence, without anger, without haste, only with a firm will, to be just him, for a while, and when the time is right, he'll know. His body will let him know. His wings will open on their own. The wind will come, and he'll go, without ritual, without applause, without longing, just with the lightness of someone who has finally chosen. Dusk arrives slowly, as if it knows something important is going to happen. The sky takes on soft tone, gold, copper, a blue that darkens slowly. This is the moment Garuda chose. He spreads his wings, not forcefully, carefully, as if he doesn't want to wake anyone. The plan is ripe, his will is firm, his body is ready, and then he flies. For the first time in ages, he flies without direction, without a name to protect, without a god to guide, without a goal in mind, just flight. And the first sensation is strange. The body knows what to do, but the spirit hesitates, as if something inside is saying, "Are you sure?" But there is no more doubt, only curiosity and freedom. With each beat of his wings, Garuda notices something new, the lightness that comes from the absence of a mission, the sound of the air when there is no urgency, the beauty of a curve made just because it looks pretty. He flies lower now, closer to the trees, the fields. He smells the world, a rare thing. Before, he was always too high up to notice. Now, everything seems new, as if he were rediscovering his own element. The sky, which was once a backdrop, becomes a companion. The wind doesn't push. It just accompanies. There is no rush. There is no goal. Just the flight itself. And that is enough. He passes by mountains, by lakes that reflect his image, by sleeping villages. No one notices him, and that calms him down. He doesn't want to be recognized. He wants to be just a figure among many, and deep down, he is surprised by how much this satisfies him. Being seen has always seemed essential. Now, being invisible brings peace. The world doesn't need to know where he is, nor does he need to. For the first time, the flight is not about destination, it is about presence. Garuda feels his entire body involved in this free movement. The wings are not at the service of anything. They are at the service of the present. He doesn't think about tomorrow, or about what he will say to Vishnu, or if he will return. He just continues, like a bird. As simple as that, and he realizes that this has always been possible, but only now has he allowed himself to do so. The sky is dark, but it is not a night of fear. It's a quiet night, of calm mystery. And in this darkness, he continues. He flies until he feels it's time to stop. And when he stops, he'll know he's arrived, even without knowing where. There in the quiet halls, where the gods do not age, something has changed. There is no alarm. There is no rush. But there is silence. A specific silence. The kind of silence that only exists when something important is missing. Vishnu feels it first. Not urgently. Not with pain. It is an absence that weighs slowly, like the absence of a constant sound that you have become so accustomed to that you no longer hear it, until it stops. Garuda is not there, and now it is clear. No winged shadows cross the sacred skies. No solid presence rests at the edge of the throne. Nothing. Only emptiness. Vishnu does not comment to anyone, nor does he need to. The others notice, but they pretend not to notice, because among the gods, silence is also an answer. Vishnu looks up at the sky, not with anger, nor with sadness, with something rarer, respect. He understands. He always knew this day could come, not because Garuda threatened. He never threatened anything, but because every being that serves too much at some point begins to wonder, what if I do not serve? Vishnu feels longing, a calm longing, without despair, like someone who knows that his friend didn't run away. He just left for a place where he doesn't need to be eternal. Garuda's absence changes the rhythm of things. Small tasks are redistributed, missions are delayed, but nothing collapses. The world goes on, and that's exactly what hurts a little, realizing that even without Garuda, everything goes on, but not the same, because there are presences that are not missed for what they do, but for who they are. And Garuda was that. He was presence, consistency, trustworthy silence. Vishnu walks through the empty hall. The echoes of his own footsteps seem louder now. He doesn't think about punishment. He never did. Garuda's freedom is not a mistake. It's a right. And deep down, Vishnu feels proud because the courage to leave is rare. Even more so for those who have always stayed. Absence weighs, yes, but it also teaches. It teaches that even the most loyal need space, that even symbols need to reinvent themselves, that no one should be eternal without a break. Vishnu closes his eyes. He sends a light thought to the open sky. It is not a call. It is not a demand. It is simply a gesture of recognition. Wherever he is, Garuda knows. He knows that his absence has been noticed, and he accepts it, and that, in the world of the gods, is rarer than blessings. Garuda keeps flying, not in a hurry, not with a fixed direction, just following what he feels. And what he feels takes him to places he has never seen before, distant regions beyond the reach of the familiar skies, lands with no name on the divine maps. They are not dangerous, just different. The air has a different taste. The wind blows in ways he does not know. The trees are more crooked. The rivers flow in unlikely directions. He stays low, not out of fear, but out of a desire to see better, to be closer to things. He soon realizes that these lands are inhabited, but not by ordinary humans. They are people who live outside of regular cycles. Silent tribes, creatures that are not mentioned in any hymns, people who look at him with curiosity but without reverence. They do not know who he is, and that relieves him. For the first time, Garuda does not need to carry his own name. No one calls him a symbol. No one expects anything from him. He is just a large, strange figure who passes through the sky with no intention of dominating or protecting. And in this anonymity, something blossoms. He begins to notice details he had not noticed before. A field where animals sleep without fear, a group of children fishing with their hands, an old man sitting silently, staring at the fire as if he were talking to time. None of this has a grand function, but it all has meaning. And he thinks, maybe the meaning lies in these small things, in these lives that do not need to be seen by many to be complete. He lands near a hill. He stands still, just observing. No one comes close. No one moves away. He is part of the scenery, and that is enough. In the distance, someone sings a wordless melody. It is a low, irregular song that blends with the sound of the wind. And Garuda closes his eyes. He does not understand the music, but he understands the state, a kind of peace without explanation, a contentment that does not depend on achievements. He begins to suspect that these lands, strange and discreet, hold something he has always sought without knowing it, a way of existing that does not require titles, a rhythm that respects each person's time, and maybe, just maybe, he can stay here a little longer, not forever, just enough to remember how good it feels to not have to be anything more than a breathing body, a bird resting in the world. Garuda wakes up with a heavy body, not heavy with a mission, nor with a symbol, nor with the sky. It is a simple weight, organic, natural, the weight of someone who has finally allowed himself to rest. He is lying under a low tree, in a silent field, where the wind blows without urgency. The ground is cold, but comfortable. The air smells of damp earth and roots, and he clearly feels a kind of tiredness he has never recognized before, a real tiredness, not imposed, not hidden behind duty. It is the kind of exhaustion that only shows itself when you stop pretending that everything is fine. Garuda moves slowly. His wings hurt a little. His muscles complain. But it is a good pain, human even, the pain that says, you used your body. You have come this far, and now he needs time. He accepts it for the first time. He does not fight this feeling. He does not try to recover quickly. He stays there, quiet, present, and he thinks, how long have I spent ignoring this? How many times have I flown with my body, asking for a break? How many silent pains have I disguised with strength? There is no answer, but the question is enough. He looks up at the sky, which now seems smaller, more intimate. It is not the grand stage it once was. It is just the ceiling of a simple moment, an ordinary day. And that calms him, because grandeur is tiring, and normality, at that moment, is rest. He takes a deep breath, feels the air slowly enter, feels the weight slowly leave. He is relearning to inhabit his own body, not as a tool, but as a home. In the distance, he hears voices, someone laughing, the sound of water being carried, a dog barking lazily. Everything goes on, with or without him, and this realization no longer hurts. On the contrary, it soothes because it means he can stop, that the world will not fall apart if he rests, that the eternity of others does not depend on his constant sacrifice. And Garuda begins to accept this new rhythm, one step at a time, one gesture at a time. No pressure, no rush. He stretches his wings just a little to feel the wind between his feathers. They still hurt, but it does not matter. He will wait. The body knows when it is ready, and when it is, it will fly again, but not before then. And this time, it will be different. Garuda spends days without flying, not because of injury, not because of obligation, but because of choice. He walks, a rare thing for someone who has lived in the air. He walks slowly, feeling the ground beneath his claws, listening to his own footsteps. At first, it is strange, the absence of wind, the silence of the wings, the world seen from ground level. But soon he realizes there is wisdom here too. The earth has a different way of teaching, and Garuda, for the first time, is willing to listen. He passes crooked trees, moss-covered rocks, trails that lead nowhere. He does not look for anything. He just observes. The world continues unhurriedly, and at this pace, he begins to think, not with the intellect of the gods, nor with the pragmatism of warriors. He thinks with his body, with what has been accumulated in silence for ages. He asks himself who he is now, without functions, without symbols, without obligatory flights. What is left when everything that defined you is no longer there? It is a question that does not demand a quick answer, and he does not press. He just lets the doubt settle in. Maybe he is just that now, a being in pause, a being in transition, and that is enough. Sitting on the edge of a stream, he observes his reflection in the water. He still sees himself as big, imposing. His feathers shine, even without effort, but there is something different in his gaze. It is not tiredness, it is depth, like someone who has seen a lot, flown a lot, but now looks calmly, without needing to dominate, without needing to prove anything. And he understands that this moment on solid ground is not a fall. It is not weakness. It is part of the cycle. Every flight needs a landing. Every strength needs stillness. Every symbol needs to remember that it is more than an image. He begins to find comfort in this simplicity. A fish crossing the current, a leaf falling slowly, the sound of distant thunder. None of this demands attention, but all of this touches him, because now he is whole, without distractions, in no hurry to go back to being what he was. And maybe he doesn't even need to go back. Maybe he can be something else, or several, or none at all. And that, for someone like Garuda, is true freedom. On a dry late afternoon, Garuda feels something different in the air. A faint smell of burning incense, mixed with the dust of the earth. He follows this trail, not out of curiosity, out of intuition. Something inside him tells him, follow, and he follows, without taking flight, just walking, as he has been doing. The path leads him to a simple, almost invisible slope. There are no temples, no gates, no guardians, just a crooked tree, a small extinguished fire, and a very old man sitting in silence. The hermit, thin, with a wrinkled face like ancient stone, his eyes closed, as if listening from within. Garuda stops a few steps away. The old man opens his eyes slowly. He is not scared. He does not bow. He is not impressed. He just looks, as if he already knows. It took a while, he says, in a low voice. Garuda does not answer. He sits down too. The silence between them is good, full. You are not lost, the hermit continues. You just stopped walking on the path of others. Now you need to learn to build your own. Garuda remains silent, but something in that look says he is listening with everything he has. The hermit picks up a handful of dry leaves and throws them into the fire. The smoke rises thinly, windingly. You have flown for many. Now you need to walk on your own. He points to Garuda's chest with a twig. Inside there is still more of you than of the world. You just need to dig. The bird listens. It doesn't disagree. It doesn't agree. It just absorbs, because these words don't require judgment. They are seeds, and it feels that something is already beginning to sprout. The old man is silent for a while. Then he says, I served too. Other times, other causes, until one day, I stopped, and I discovered that the world goes on without my rush, and that silence teaches better than shouting. Garuda looks at the fire. He remembers the battles, the missions, the shouting, and he understands. The old man smiles, not out of vanity, but out of recognition, like someone who sees in the other a younger reflection of an old pain. Stay as long as you want, he says. Here, no one expects anything from anyone, and Garuda feels this is exactly what he needed to hear. The next day dawns slowly. The sun appears behind the mountains, shy, as if it didn't want to interrupt. Garuda is still there, near the crooked tree. The hermit prepares tea in silence. Slow, meticulous movements. No gesture is wasted. Garuda watches, but doesn't ask anything until the old man without looking at him, says, "There's no need to rush to understand. But you can start asking now." Garuda thinks for a moment. Then he simply says, "Why was I made this way?" The question comes out softly, almost without force. But the old man understands. He pours the tea into a small bowl and offers it to him. "Because the gods also get tired," he answers. "So they create strong servants. Someone has to carry the weight when they want to keep looking up." Garuda holds the bowl carefully. The smoke rises softly. The hermit continues. But strength without pause becomes a prison, and that's where the imbalance begins. He looks at him firmly, without harshness. "Did you fly out of faith or out of fear?" The question cuts deep. Garuda hesitates. Then he answers with surprising honesty. First, out of faith, then out of habit. Finally, out of fear of not knowing who he would be without it. The old man nods. "It's like that for almost everyone." He takes a sip of his tea. "The difference is that you stopped to ask. Most people never stop." Garuda looks at the ground. The earth is full of small animal footprints, lives that go on in silence, without grandeur, but with direction. "And now?" he asks. "What do I do with this?" The old man smiles. "Now it's up to you. And for the first time, the decision is truly yours." He points to the forest. "You can leave tomorrow or never. You can go back to heaven or walk until you're tired. You just don't have to do it for anyone but yourself." Garuda feels a weight lift off his shoulders, a weight he didn't even know he was carrying yet. He realizes that he doesn't need to justify himself, that his existence is no longer for sale, and that maybe this is the beginning of something new. The hermit stands up, takes a piece of dry bread, and breaks it in half. "Do you want it?" he offers. Garuda accepts. He eats slowly, for the first time in millennia, without wondering what he should be doing. The sun begins to set behind the hills. Garuda and the hermit remain there, sitting near the tree. The tea has already cooled. The embers of the fire breathe in silence. After a long, calm moment, the old man speaks without looking at the bird. "You know that your story was written before you were even born, don't you?" Garuda remains still, but he feels something tighten in his chest. "You were appointed before you opened your eyes. The functions came before consciousness. The glory was chosen by others, and what was left for you was to fulfill it. That's what they call destiny." Garuda doesn't answer, but inside him, the phrase resonates. It's like an ancient key turning, a truth he always suspected, but never dared to face. The hermit continues, "Everything was already planned, your flights, your victories, even your silences. And for a long time, you accepted it because it seemed right, because it seemed divine." Garuda wonders if any of the gods thought to ask permission, to ask what he wanted. Probably not, because when someone is born useful, no one asks if they want to be. And this realization, now clear, hurts. Not like a wound, but like a pressure that suddenly leaves, and leaves a void. He doesn't feel angry. Not yet. He feels strange, as if he were discovering that his entire life was a role rehearsed by someone else, that his freedom was a set, that his choices were just variations within a script that was already written. The old man watches him, not with pity, carefully. Discovering this isn't easy, but it's necessary. You need to know what you were given to start choosing what will truly be yours. Garuda takes a deep breath. Night falls calmly. The first stars appear, timidly. He thinks about everything he's lived through, the applause, the battles, the temples, and he realizes that almost none of this started with him. It all started before, in voices that decided for him. Now, for the first time, there's room for something new, something that doesn't come from above, something that doesn't require brilliance, just presence. He closes his eyes and accepts this truth. The past has been written, yes, but what comes next will be dictated by other wings. The night progresses. The sky, now full of stars, seems wider than ever. Garuda remains silent. The hermit sleeps leaning against a tree trunk, snoring lightly, and Garuda, standing there, stares into the darkness with his eyes wide open. He feels something he has avoided for ages. Anger. It is not a hurricane. It is not hate. It is a calm, precise anger, like a thread stretched too far for too long. An annoyance that has remained silent out of respect, out of fear, out of habit. But now, it needs to come out. He thinks about everything. About the commands given without conversation. About the rituals where he was referred to as a weapon, not as a being. About the prayers that asked for his strength, but never for his peace. And for the first time, he does not hide what he feels. He is angry. Angry for having believed he could not stop. Angry for having confused obedience with love. Angry for having been so silent that he almost forgot his own voice. He does not want revenge or justice. He just wants this anger to have a place, that it no longer needs to be hidden under noble titles, because even celestial beings have the right to be tired, to be uncomfortable, to be broken, and recognizing this is liberating. He doesn't scream. He doesn't fly. He doesn't destroy. He just takes a deeper breath, and in that breath, something changes. The anger doesn't grow. It passes, like a short storm. It doesn't disappear, but it settles. It leaves space, and in that space, something rare emerges. Relief. A relief that slowly trickles down through his feathers, through his muscles, through his chest. Relief in knowing that he no longer needs to pretend, that he no longer needs to play a role that no longer makes sense. Relief in having felt anger without getting lost in it, in having allowed himself to be imperfect. For the first time in ages, Garuda feels he can start over, not as a symbol, not as a legend, as a presence, as a being. The wind blows lightly through the trees. He listens, and for the first time, the sound doesn't call him to action. It just lulls him. He lies down, his wings spread over the earth, and he sleeps like he's never slept before. The day dawns, and this time, Garuda wakes up different. He is no longer in doubt, nor in memories. He is whole. His body is still tired, but it is a mild tiredness that no longer hurts. And most importantly, he knows what to do. Not by order, not by destiny, but by choice. For the first time in his long existence, Garuda will decide for himself. He gets up slowly, feeling each part of his body as if it were new. The hermit is already standing, feeding the fire. When he sees Garuda standing, he says nothing. He just smiles, and in that smile, there is recognition. The kind of smile you give to someone who has returned from a difficult place. Garuda takes a deep breath. He looks up at the sky. It remains the same. Blue, open, infinite. But now, he does not see it as an obligation. He sees it as a possibility. He no longer needs to go back. He no longer needs to serve. He can, if he wants, but he can also stay, or follow another path, or not follow any path at all. It is this freedom that changes everything. He thinks of Vishnu, of everything they lived together, of respect, in silence, in absence, and he knows the bond has not been broken, but it also does not bind him anymore. Vishnu is not a prison, nor a home. He was part of a story that now ends, lightly, without a violent rupture, just a natural end to a cycle. The hermit approaches. He hands him a fruit. For the path, he says simply. Garuda accepts, and does not say thank you, because the silence between them already contains that. He moves away. He walks to a clearing. He spreads his wings, not out of duty, out of desire, a calm desire. He will fly again, but this time, for himself, without a mission, without a function, just for the pleasure of moving his own body in the space he himself has chosen. That is the true choice. Not saying yes to what is expected, but saying yes to what is born from within. He looks one last time at the ground, then at the sky, and then he flies, with no fixed destination, without haste, with a lightness that does not come from strength, but from freedom. The sky welcomes him like an old friend. Garuda flies high, but not as high as before. He doesn't need to. Grandiosity is no longer a requirement. Each wing beat is slow, felt. He doesn't cut through the air. He glides through it. There's beauty in that, a beauty that doesn't seek to be seen. That simply is. He's in no hurry. He's not looking for anything. He just flies. The landscape below changes slowly. Mountains, forests, winding rivers. The world seems calmer now. Or maybe it's him. His body responds well. Still strong. Still firm. But now, there's a new care, a respect for himself that he's never had before. Garuda feels each air current like a caress, as if the sky were saying, "Now, yes, you're really here." He thinks about everything he's been through, the battles, the nonstop flights, the doubts, and he feels gratitude, not for having suffered, but for having survived the expectations, for having gone through it all without losing the ability to stop, to change, to start over. The flight takes him to a high and calm stretch where the sky touches the curve of the horizon, a place where the world seems suspended. There he stops, simply stops, floats, wings open, body motionless. Time stretches. There is no sound, only presence, and Garuda understands. This is the moment, not the end, but the transition point. He does not need to keep flying. Not now. The flight has already fulfilled its role, not as a mission, as an intimate ritual, as a gesture of acceptance. He closes his eyes, takes a deep breath. The air enters slowly, fills everything, and little by little, without pain, without fear, he begins to dissolve, not as a loss, as a liberation. The feathers become golden dust, the wings become wind, the body becomes a silence, but the presence remains in every space of the sky, in every breath of freedom. Garuda does not disappear. He simply transforms. The flight ends, but he remains. There is no pain, no rupture, no resistance. Garuda's body does not fall, does not break, does not scream. It simply ceases to be solid. Little by little, the matter dissolves with the same care with which he learned to land. It is as if the air itself welcomes him back, gratefully. First, the feathers. They fall apart into soft, almost luminous fragments. Then, the muscles, the claws, the broad chest. Everything is emptying, not out of weakness, but out of completeness. Garuda is not afraid. That is over. What he feels now is lightness, a new lightness, different from the one he felt when flying. It is a lightness that comes from no longer needing to sustain any form, any title, any function. He always thought that his body was his link to the world. Now he realizes it was also a limit. With his body, he served. Without his body, he belongs. Not to a place, not to a temple, but to time itself. His consciousness remains, without borders, without contours. He is still himself. He just no longer needs to appear to be. The vision expands. There are no eyes, but there is a gaze. He sees the sky, the earth, the memories. He sees Vishnu, serene, with his eyes closed. He sees the hermit, silent, smiling at the wind. He sees everything he has lived, and he feels no loss. He feels continuity, as if the story were now being told from within the world, no longer through the gestures or battles. The end of the body is not the end. It is just an adjustment, a return, a rest with no return. He does not wish to return. nor to continue, just to be part of the air, of the silence, of the space between things. He is no longer a bird, nor a warrior, nor a symbol. He is presence, free of image, free even of his own name. And so, in this absence so full, Garuda continues, invisible, whole, and at peace. There is no defined form. There is no beginning, no edge, no end. Garuda is now something else, something that cannot be named. He is not shadow. He is not light. He is not wind, but he is also all of these. A presence that hovers, that breathes along with the world. He feels the trees growing, the rivers running, the skies changing color, and he feels it effortlessly, without intention. He is in everything, but he does not impose himself on anything. The new form is subtle. It is like an echo that does not need a voice, like a perfume that does not need an origin. He no longer thinks as before. Thoughts do not come in sentences, but in soft pulses, perceptions that spring up like water under the earth. He understands that he no longer needs to decide. The choice has become a flow. There is no mission, no destiny, no waiting. There is a presence, pure and constant. He still remembers who he was. He still holds everything he lived, but now without weight. Memories are dry leaves floating on a calm lake. They do not hurt. They do not charge. They just exist. He touches the world, but the world does not notice, or he senses it faintly. An unexpected breeze, a deeper silence, a feeling that something is right, even without explanation. Sometimes small birds change course in the air, as if they sense something guiding them. Sometimes an old man sitting alone smiles for no reason. These are his features, small, invisible, and yet complete. Garuda does not wish to be remembered or revered. He only wishes to remain a part of what moves without haste, of what changes without noise, of what exists without form. The new form is freedom without effort, and in that freedom, he finds what he has sought for ages, not a home, not an end, but a state of belonging that requires no proof, a being whole in all that is alive, without needing to say, I am. He simply is, and that, now, is more than enough. The sky hasn't changed color. It hasn't fallen. It hasn't even broken. But something, for those who pay attention, is different. There is no longer the wide, silent shadow of Garuda crossing the air. There is no sign. There is no body. There are no wings. But still, there is something. A new silence, not empty, full. A silence that spreads slowly, as if it doesn't want to scare. In the celestial lands, the gods continue their rites. Humans continue their prayers. But something hovers between them all. An absence that doesn't hurt, but weighs. It's like when a drum stops playing, and only then do you realize that it was there all along. Vishnu doesn't comment. He doesn't need to. Those who know, feel it. Those who don't, suspect. Garuda is gone, but he left a kind of echo, a space that can't be filled, a gesture that never ends, and that, for many, is disconcerting, because it was always easy to count on him. A fixed presence, a quick response, a symbol that solved problems. Now there is no symbol, only the sky, and he is too calm. Some celestial birds avoid flying where he used to pass, not out of fear, out of respect, as if that space were in mourning, even without sadness, as if that part of the sky had become an altar. And humans feel it, but they can't explain it. There are nights when the wind blows differently. There are mornings when the air seems clearer. Children dream of golden feathers, even without knowing who Garuda was. And silent monks, in forgotten temples, breathe deeper, without understanding why. The world doesn't talk about him, but it feels it, because when a presence is constant for millennia, it becomes part of the ground, the sky, the body, and when it goes, the silence that remains is like a reminder of everything it supported, not with imposition, but with presence. And now, that presence has become something else, more subtle, more widespread, and this silent sky begins to teach that absence is not a failure, that disappearing is not running away, that sometimes the greatest gesture is to stop and leave space. Garuda is no longer there, but it's in everything that continues, even after the flight. And maybe, just maybe, it's now that the world will truly start to listen. In the celestial realms, where time bends delicately and the gods rarely move unnecessarily, Vishnu does something he hasn't done in a long, long time. He stands up, not by war, not by ceremony, but for silence. A silence that had slowly grown since Garuda's departure. He doesn't speak, no need. Those who live around feel that something important is about to happen. The god takes his first steps calmly, no rush. Like someone walking inside an empty temple, your feet make no sound, but wherever you step, the air changes. He passes through the high portals of the divine abode and descends slowly towards the world of men. There is no procession. There is no rain of flowers, just the subtle sound of the world spinning as it always has. Vishnu does not come to fetch Garuda. He knows that Garuda is no longer there, and that, in a way, has never been so present. But the god, who has always watched from above, now wants to feel with his own feet. He wants to understand, with his own body, what is left. It descends through the hills, through the fields, through the villages that Garuda has already flown over thousands of times, and wherever he goes, no one recognizes him, and that, strangely, comforts him, because now he doesn't want to be God, want to be a part of it. Vishnu watches humans, his eyes, so full of things he has already forgotten. He sees a boy carrying water with difficulty, a woman carefully combing another woman's hair, an old man who stops to listen to the wind, just for listening. Little things, but full. And he begins to understand. Garuda was flying over all of this, but he was carrying the weight of a sky that did not listen. And it was there, in that simple world, that he chose to stop. Maybe that's why Vishnu is here, to see what Garuda saw, to walk where he has not walked, to touch what he only felt from afar. At the end of the day, the god sits under an ordinary tree. Don't call anyone. It doesn't illuminate anything. Just breathe like a man, as a being. And there, in silence, he begins to feel what Garuda learned, that descending is not falling. It is sometimes the only way to understand the sky. It starts slowly, almost imperceptible, a ray of colder air in the middle of the hot afternoon, a change in direction that no one expected, a wind that doesn't blow from anywhere but arrives. It doesn't bring dust. It doesn't lift leaves. It doesn't whistle on the rooftops. It just touches, lightly, curiously, blue. Not blue in color, but in sensation. Whoever feels it knows. It's a wind that carries calm, a subtle silence within it, as if it brings back memories of something that hasn't happened yet. Children feel it first. They stop playing for a second. They look at the sky. Some close their eyes. Then they start running again, as if nothing had happened. But something in them has changed. Animals notice it too. A dog lies down more calmly. A horse breathes more deeply. An owl, even during the day, opens its eyes and stares into space. Adults take longer. They are too busy with their tasks, their thoughts, their duties. But even they, at some point, stop. They look around. They feel their skin crawl slightly. It's not cold. It's not fear. It's as if someone had passed very close without making a sound. This wind doesn't carry a voice, but it carries a presence. And this presence is familiar to those who have heard old stories of a bird that flew between worlds, of a being that was strength, but also silence. The blue wind is not Garuda, but it is part of him. It is the trail of that which dissolved in the sky and now circulates freely. It doesn't come often. It doesn't respond to requests. It only appears when there is space. When someone stopped trying to be strong for a moment, when someone forgot to pretend that everything is okay. And it is in this space that it enters. It touches the face. It passes by the nape of the neck. It wraps itself in the arms. And then it moves on, without setting a time. Without saying goodbye, it comes to remind something has changed, something left, and, at the same time, stayed. And when the blue wind passes, no one knows exactly what happened. They only know that for a moment they breathed differently. The village was small, so small that the name never left the surrounding area. The houses were simple, the ground was dirt, and time passed like an old man in a rocking chair. Nothing there drew attention, except, perhaps, for one child. A boy with sunken eyes, always barefoot, always attentive. No one taught him to listen to the world. That was all he did. He would sit near the well, his chin resting on his knees, watching the wind, the insects, the sound of the ropes creaking on the buckets. It was as if he saw what no one else could see. And one day, the blue wind blew by. No one noticed, only he. At first it came like a different breeze, colder, cleaner, then like a shiver down his back. The boy closed his eyes and listened. It wasn't a voice. It was more of a wordless call, an invitation without explanation, a strange calm that made him want to smile and cry at the same time. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't even try to understand. He just felt it. And since that day, something changed in him. He stopped running with the other boys. He stopped getting irritated with the adults. He started looking up more. The sky, which had been nothing but a depth, became a living thing. He started drawing wings on the ground with twigs. He started whistling, without melody, but with meaning. No one understood, but some, the older ones, said softly, "That one heard something." The boy didn't explain. He only felt. He didn't know the name Garuda. He had never seen it. He had never heard stories about golden birds or distant gods. But in his chest, something said, "Someone very big flew over here," and left. And now the world breathes differently. Sometimes, at night, he dreams. He dreams that he flies, but not like ordinary birds. He flies still, as if the sky came to him, as if the world were below and inside at the same time. And in these dreams, he is never alone. There is always something with him, a light warmth, a pleasant silence, a blue wind. The boy doesn't know the name of it. He doesn't need to. What matters is that he heard it, and it will never be the same again. She lived alone, high up on the mountain, a place where the wind was stronger and voices didn't reach. She wasn't a hermit, nor a saint, nor crazy. She was just someone who chose silence after so much noise. Her name no longer mattered. The village down below sometimes spoke of her in whispers. They said that one day she came down and said things that no one understood. Then she went up again and never came back. But that night, she didn't dream of ruins, as usual, nor of dark rivers or muffled voices. She dreamed of a bird, golden, huge, but silent. It didn't fly. It hovered. And yet, it seemed to go very far away. In the dream, it landed in front of her. It didn't say anything, but its eyes, her eyes filled with tears. Just by looking at it, it was as if it were saying, "You can stop running too." When she woke up, she didn't feel scared. She felt relief. She woke up with her body light, as if what had been crushing her for years had dissolved. The wind blew softly that morning, and for the first time in a long time, she wanted to open the windows. She stood there, still, looking at the sky. There was nothing, no birds, no clouds. But she knew. She knew that bird had been there, not with its body, but with what remains, after a symbol is gone. For the first time, she didn't feel guilty about being alone, nor shame, nor fear. She felt presence, and a question came to her mind, as clear as the sky. What still holds you back? There was no one there to answer, only the wind, and it didn't demand anything. It just waited. She spent the day quietly, as always, but there was something different in her steps, a new lightness, an absence of rush, and at the end of the afternoon, for the first time in years, she smiled, alone, but whole, not because she had understood everything, but because she had finally felt that she no longer needed to justify herself, or hide, or remember everything. The bird came just to show her that weight can land, and that even in solitude there are wings. Trees have always spoken, but almost no one listens. The noise of the cities, of desires, of urgencies, drowns out everything. But now, something has changed. The blue wind passed by there too, and left a trail, a new rhythm. Anyone who walks through the forests notices, not immediately, but little by little. The sound of the leaves is no longer the same. It's not just noise anymore. It's standard, message. The tree moves and says, listen. The leaf falls and says, stop. A twig snaps and says, you are here. Those who still live close to the land, the shepherds, the woodcutters, the wanderers, are the first to notice. An old man who spends his days carving wood begins to hear things that do not come from his mind. A subtle murmur among the branches, a calm that runs down the trunk to the foot. He doesn't understand with words, but understand with the body. He stops cutting so much. You start sitting more, listening more. Trees don't give answers, but they also don't ask questions. They just share. The new presence of heaven is in them now, not as a spirit, as frequency, as if Garuda's silence had descended into the branches, and there it spread out. Children playing on the courts feel like lying on the grass. Close your eyes, keep quiet, without knowing why. Young people who are lost in agitated thoughts, when passing through certain trails, feel a sudden peace, as if someone were saying, you don't have to run. The leaves speak to the body of those who pass by. They say simple things, but no one else has the courage to say them. Rest, breathe, give up if you want. Not everyone listens. Most follow, noisy, concerned. But those who listen begin to change. They didn't see monks, not even wise men. They just become more present. And that now seems more important than understanding. The trees are still there, firm, silent, talking softly to those who still know how to stay. And on nights when the wind passes through the branches, it takes with it the sound of the leaves. And whoever listens with an open heart swears that, for a second, they heard a wing beat very lightly. In the depths where the light of day does not touch, the Nagas slept, ancient, divine serpents full of knowledge and venom, guardians of the mystery, of the subsoil, of what cannot be said aloud. They did not dream. They waited. They waited for the end of a cycle, for the end of a duel that seemed eternal. For ages, their presence was defined by a single fact. They were the opposite of Garuda. While he flew, they crawled. While he soared, they dived. While he was a symbol of order, they were remembered as chaos. But now, he is no more. And this awakens them, not with fury, not with a desire for revenge, with doubt, because without the bird, what are they? If there is no hunter, are they still prey? If there is no sky, are they still underground? The first to wake up is Vasuki, the oldest. She feels the silence at the top of the world and knows something has ended. And when something like this ends, the enemies change too. She crawls to the surface slowly. The light doesn't hurt her as it used to. The world, strangely, is calmer. She climbs a hill. Where she expected war, she finds a breeze. Where she expected a challenge, she finds a light wind. Vasuki raises her head, and for the first time, she feels that she is not being watched, or followed, or pursued. Garuda's absence is real, and in this emptiness, she finds something unexpected: rest. The other Nagas also awaken, some with suspicion, others with relief. Little by little, they emerge, not to dominate, but to understand. There is a strange kind of peace in the air, not absolute, but possible. And this, for someone who has always lived in readiness, is new. They move through the world. They touch the stones. They feel the roots. They do not encounter persecution. They do not encounter fear. Some humans see them, and they do not run. They just watch, as if they know that now is different, that ancient sacred rivalry has perhaps come to an end. Not with agreement, but with maturity, because sometimes the end does not need to be spoken, only lived. And the Nagas, for the first time, do not feel inferior, not hidden, not cursed, just free from being a shadow, free from a symbol that no longer defines them. They look up at the sky, and they know Garuda is not there, but something of him still hovers, and that something paradoxically has brought peace even to them. And so, the serpents return to the depths, not to hide, but to rest for the first time, without fear of the sky. High on a mountain range, where the wind blows in unpredictable directions, there is an ancient temple, so old that its name has been lost. No caravan passes through there. No map includes it. It was built by forgotten hands, at a time when the gods were still learning to listen. It's simple. No gold, no guardians, just stone, moss, and silence. And there, Garuda never landed. It was never called. It was never painted on the walls. Maybe that's why this place remained intact, forgotten by everyone, except the world. The stones hold something. It's not energy, no secret. It's a space, pure space, space for what does not yet have a name. And it is this space that begins to shine, not with light, with presence. Anyone who goes up there doesn't see anything special, but feel a slight warmth on the skin, a calm that spreads slowly, a desire to say nothing, just staying. The few who come to the temple do not do so out of curiosity. They are guided by something they cannot explain. A call that does not say, "Come," but whispers, "If you want, there is a place." A woman leaves a handkerchief there. A man sits and does not cry, but he feels like it. An old man touches the stone with his forehead and sleeps peacefully for the first time. And everyone, when they leave, doesn't say anything, not because they don't want to, but because they don't know how. It is as if the temple was made to welcome what cannot be contained in words. What's left when the symbol goes? What is born when no one is trying to understand? Some say that the spirit of Garuda lives there, but that's not quite it. Garuda doesn't live anywhere now. He became wind, whisper, light memory. But in that temple, he is heard, not as a legend, as a feeling, like the memory of something that has never been seen, but has always been there. The temple continues. It doesn't grow. It doesn't change. It is not necessary, because there are places that don't need to be noticed to have an effect. They just need to exist, in silence, in stone, in space. And it is in this space that Garuda's flight rests, not as an end, but as a pause that invites, without demanding, that welcomes, without explaining. This remains, even when everyone else leaves. Good night.